was asked to give a little presentation on financing the worship of the deities. It's a large topic, and there's probably many here today. There's many devotees from many temples, and what would be good is that as I'm going through the presentation, just be good at the end. I'm going to ask for devotees to share any positive ideas that they have in their particular temple, which has worked in regards to financing the worship. So just keep that in mind. And dana plays a quite important role in our culture. Dana meaning giving, in charity. It's there in the Bhagavad Gita. It's there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's very much the culture what's in India now still. It's very much prominent there. Like here, this picture is, I see it's, this is a lady, Suma, and typical, this is a typical scenario. So she's living in Mysore, and she wakes up early in the morning, before dawn. She does rangoli in front of her house. And then she spends 15 minutes doing puja. Then she recite prayers. She has like a mangalati. And then what she will do is she will offer 5 rupees, yeah, from her own savings, and she places it into the jar and puts it in the corner of her room. So she does that for 365 days a year, so every day of the year. So at the end, she has like 1,825 rupees. You know? So point here is that then she goes to the temple and she puts it in a temple hundi, yeah, in her village to help sustain the temple. So I bring that up because that's just part of the culture, you could say, of the broader perspective of Hinduism. And often you might see, here I see often where a couple comes in to the temple and they won't personally put the money in the hundi or the donation box. It will be their son or their daughter. So awkwardly, the young girl or boy will be holding the money and their parents will be pushing them towards the hundi or the donation box and put it in. I mean, that came to mind because I was asking one Indian congregation member here about the culture of giving in India, and he brought this up. He's saying that he was trained when he was very young that he would put the donations in the donation box. So it's just a natural part of their religious dharma, so to speak, is to actually give. Now, I bring that up because sometimes in ISKCON devotees may not always come from this actual culture. Some yes and some no. So it might not be automatically there or seen as a need. Say, for example, like some devotees may think, in other words, that I'm being initiated, I'm chanting 16 rounds and I'm doing this little service for the temple. They may be earning money, maybe in an earning situation, but because I'm a committed devotee, they may not understand or really imbibe this culture of giving. I'm saying that's one case scenario, but I see that, for example, most of our donations, it does come from, interestingly, the non-sadhakas, like the Hindu demographics of our temple, because that makes a big difference to fundraising in a temple where there's a big group of Hindus, and often they may give more than what the, say, sadhakas give. Although in one sense the sadhakas are given their life, but it is part of our culture. So sometimes I see there's a miss there. So that's why I bring it up. And as we know, I'm just going to go through. You probably, if you type in Google and an interesting search is the richest temples in India. Yeah. So this just shows the culture and how it manifests practically. Yeah. So this is the richest temple in India, apparently, Tirupati. It didn't give the amount which but their revenue or their income, it's I think it's government controlled. That's a bit of an issue in India. It can be an issue, but in one day they have 50,000, 50 to 100,000 pilgrims daily, and it's part of their dharma to give money, Lakshmi, or jewels or gold. So we can probably, and it's, yeah. So in one year they have 27.3 million people. So that's Tirumala. Another one is, if I pronounce this right, Sri Padmabhaswami Temple. Yeah. Apparently this temple has an assets of around 90,000 crores. Now 90,000, 1 crore is 10,000, I think. I looked it up, and so they have 90,000 crores of gold, yeah, silver, emeralds, and diamonds, etc. So again, I'm bringing this up because this is part of the imbibed culture of dhan, of actually giving. And here's another temple, Jagannath Temple. It's in Gujarat. This temple apparently, this temple has been looted and destroyed at least 17 times, and all their wealth taken. But it stands today as one of the richest temples in India. You know, they just build the temple again and the whole thing starts again. Like in Jagannath Puri, that's happened more than once. The temple is desecrated, going back for it, and they just start again, build it up, and people give money again. Yeah. So this is one of the richest temples in India, although it's been ransacked 17 times. And interestingly, also, I didn't really think of this before, but Jagannath Puri is listed as one of the richest temples in India. Yeah. It says at least 20,000 crores of rupees. Yeah. That goes 6 times during festival time. So the temple, and it did not know here, the temple once received 1.72 crores of rupees donated by a European devotee. Not sure who that was, whether it was one of our devotees, but they're very much into Jagannath. So I'm just bringing these up because this is the culture which perhaps we might be, to some degrees, not completely imbibed in our ISKCON society. That might be one of the reasons why some temples struggle to one degree or another. This is the Kashi Vishwanath temple in Varanasi. They receive about 4.5 crore of donations a year. Right. So some of the issues, we'll speak about some of the ways to actually finance the worship, but I've been looking at here some of the reasons or perhaps the issues of why in some of our temples throughout the world it may be a problem, and it often is, yeah, which is a shame. So one, as I mentioned, can be the demographics of a temple. You might be living in an area where, I keep on mentioning about the Hindu aspect of our society. They're naturally, as I mentioned, they're naturally inspired to give. But you might be living in a temple where there's not so many people from India. So it might be one of the reasons why the funds might not be as much as in another place. Another issue as well is when the finances, what I put here, dry up. You know, we've had different phases in our temple where we've been can't pay the bill for the vegetables, and then we're now in a different situation. But sometimes it can happen. So I've seen how some of the causes for this or lack of funds. So this also addresses by identifying the causes, we can also then identify what we can do to help bring in funds for the worship. One of the important things that I find is mismanagement of the funds that come in. that has a big impression on people who could otherwise give. And that can be, and so, I mean, I've had that experience personally. This was a few years ago where someone had donated for the outfit, and somehow or another I had, something had gone wrong with their donation, and it hadn't shown on their temple where it should have. So it was a mismanagement on my behalf in dealing with this devotee's donation to the deities, and it was, I think it was quite an amount. It was for the whole deity outfit, and they was not impressed. Yeah, and I felt so bad about mismanaging their donation, and I think I could say that they didn't donate again, as far as I recall. Unfortunately, that was due to my mismanagement. So I learned a lesson there. And one simple way of this is to, a good thing is to give people receipts and have a very robust and clear means of accounting the donations that come in. That's so important. Like we have in our temple, the first entrance place is the reception. So our receptionist has a receipt book. The shop has a receipt book. I have a receipt book. And I always like to give receipts to people, even if sometimes they say, no, I don't need. No, I want to give you this receipt. And now we have quite a good system, and it's quite transparent. It's very transparent. And another problem that some devotees may not feel like giving, if there's in-temple fighting or there's politics, often that could be a reason why the funds dry up or devotees stop giving, because they're unsure about the temple. That's why it's never, I mean, temple managers change, and that's to be expected. But if it changes every week because of in-temple fighting, then that's obviously going to affect the faith of those in your congregation. Yeah, because we know people give donations, but they want to make sure that their donation is going to be well received and well used. Yeah, so we should be able to show that. Another point, which I couldn't find it, but there's more than one quote from Prabhupada where he emphasizes preaching and money will come. I think he says that to one devotee as a conversation. He said, why is he always worried about money? He should just preach. So that might be an indication as well. If the funds are not coming in and we're struggling, we should look at, are we actually preaching? Of course, we're not just preaching to get money, we're preaching to please the Lord, but it will so happen that preaching will generate income. Yeah, the Lord will be pleased and he will maintain what we lack as a temple. Anantas Chintayan Pulmon, as Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita. He does it personally, and he does it collectively for a temple. So that's another factor to keep in mind. Also, finding the balance. Probably temples are differently managed. For example, as far as I know, in India, most Pujari departments kind of run somewhat separate from the main temple finances. Yeah. And often, sometimes that the Pujari department, I think it's like that in Krishna Balaram, so much donations come through that the rest of the temple is dependent upon the Pujari department for their funding of their projects, So I bring this up as well because in the sense that the head Pujari sometimes is at odds with the head of finances. So you've had this problem in your temples or the temple president. In other words, the head Pujari wants to do so much, wants to spend this, wants to spend that. But the head of finances is thinking about budgets, is thinking very, what they say, down to earth. And, then the head Pujari, no, we should sacrifice to Krishna. Don't worry, the money will come. So the point I'm making here is that if there can be very nice relationship, say with department heads, head Pujari, especially with the rest of the temple leaders, yeah, And actually, from my experience, is that the more we engage and give facility for other department heads to engage in deity worship, they actually become part of they're one of the pujaris. So they're very much into, and it's a case of finding a balance as well, because we shouldn't be completely irresponsible that we just spend blindly, and with the understanding, don't worry, Krishna will just send us money. We have to be a little bit responsible of how much we spend as well, even if the donations are coming. So, just finding the balance of how much to stretch, how much to spend on Krishna, considering how much is coming in, how much to spend knowing he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead and he's going to be pleased, and not being able to pay the Boga bill. So that takes inter-department relationship to actually come to a nice understanding. So we can stretch a bit, but at the same time, not leave the rest of the temple in the want. So that takes good Vaishnav, strong relationships. And that in turn will also be seen by the congregation. Yeah. And another point here I've got is Growing Givers' Hearts. There's a book that I read a few years ago. It's a study of successful Christian churches who are very successful in fundraising. And the title of the book is Growing Givers' Hearts, Treating Fundraising as Ministry. So they identified, or the book focuses on what they see as a spiritual way of fundraising. So in other words, to nurture the prospective donors to facilitate their spiritual advancement. So in other words, instead of looking at possible donors as a utilitarian or just they're just humane and they're doing the needful by giving us money to actually run the temple, but they look at it as vital, important. The main thing is to take care of them spiritually, to put the spiritual first. So they speak a lot about developing relationships with the donors based on this principle to encourage their spiritual growth, because from their spiritual growth, they will become generous, if they're in a position, and then they will give. So that's just something to keep in mind. Someone is donating to the temple, we might strike up a conversation and ask them about their spiritual life, how they're going. Are they chanting the holy name? Is there anything I can do for you? Can we, do you have any questions about the spiritual practice? Yeah. And what I do, if you might be, I had that book and I lent that book and I lost that book, but I found it on Amazon recently and I've just ordered it again. And if you're interested to read this book, it might be interesting to some of you. I can put it on the chat and you can look at that if you want, So another thing to be, Shinkovachi, we could just give me a time when I'm got 5 minutes left, just feel that. So another thing to be aware of that I've seen is what called shaking down the congregation. You might get some idea what that means. Is sometimes in a temple something's needed. So there's a big event happened, and the idea is to shake down to get as much money as possible from the congregation. Plead with them. Now this plays its part in some. It does play its part to like some degree, but if it's happening every month or every 6 months, we found that it wasn't the congregation didn't really reciprocate. They felt they was being shaken down. Like there's an event. Oh, here we go. Here's another event. It's going to be a fundraising thing. They don't take it in the right spirit. So we don't do that now. And interestingly, since we stopped doing that, we haven't been short of funds, so to speak. They're coming. People are giving out of their generosity. And it don't have to be, turn them upside down and shake. So you know, should be aware of that when there's a fund. We should be careful when we should think about when we're doing a fundraising. You know, do we really need to do this? Do we really need to make a massive campaign and really push to the whole congregation? Or is there one or two people who we can privately speak to who might be able to help us to buy a new van or whatever? Yeah, sometimes it works. And we have to say that. But I'm just saying from our experience here that we shied away or we generally shy away from that now, these big fundraising events. And some situations may be needed, like TOVP. It's very much needed there. The circumstances are different. And they have fundraising events every month, it seems, you know, to inspire people to give. Yeah. So again, I'm not going to be able to cover all aspects of fundraising for the worship. I'm trying to cover as much as I can. But another point here is to make it easy. And I think I've already mentioned about that. To be transparent, to give receipts. Another thing that every temple should have is online. We get most of our donations are coming online. So even if you're a small center, whatever, we should have I'm sure you do, you have your website. And the website should be nicely made so it's easy and not difficult to actually make a donation. That makes a big difference. I mean, I get receipts for all the online donations that we receive automatically. And also the person that gives the donation gets a receipt online. And every day, persons are making donations online. Every day I get 4 or 5 notifications of donations. And what we have as well, for our temple, we have a, it's called, we have an app. Let me just bring it up. It's called Maya Temple Connect. And it's an app on the phone, which is about all the programs and classes of our temple, and persons can make a donation on the app here. And the devotee who did this, he's quite happy to do it for any temple as well. So if you're interested in that, you can contact me and I can put you in touch with him. So they can just make a donation straight online. There's another thing that we have in our temple now. We have what's it where you just have a card. What's it called? Card reader. Contactless donation. That's it. So we have, by the altar, we have this stand and you can make a donation with your credit card and you just touch it to the machine. Yeah. And that works. People have got people used to that now. That's how people come in. They get out their credit card, they touch it to the machine and they make a donation. Don't have to do anything else. Yeah. And they can choose a donation. 108, £50, they press it, they put their card to it, and done. Put it back in their pocket, done, easy. Yeah, and that was okay, and that was requested by one of our congregation members. Actually, it was an idea from one of our businessmen who's a congregation devotee. He said, "Why don't you?" I mean, everywhere. So, and that's working very well. So it's something to think about. If you've got a lot of footfall coming through your temple, that to make it easy for people to donate. That's the main point. And leave a legacy. This is something which has been somewhat successful here to some degree. This means that we offer the opportunity for people to leave the temple money in their will. Yeah, and there's a little leaflet that we give out for that. We explains in a nice way because it's a sensitive point, you know. And we've had that. When people, when they pass away, we've had thousands and thousands of pounds that actually come from that. So that's another. So leaving a legacy, let it congregation know they can put the temple in their will. Another thing, just finish on this point, is announcements and appreciations. When people do give donations, like they sponsor an outfit, you know, on Janmashtami, make the announcement after Didi greeting. Thank you, this beautiful outfit. Everyone should know this outfit was donated by so-and-so. And you go, you know, and they like it. In one sense, they're not looking for it, but they like to be acknowledged. And it makes them feel good when they get the blessings of the devotees. So there's a few points. So I thought if I've got time, if there's devotees can perhaps come forward with their particular ideas in their temple that works for raising funds. Or otherwise, any questions? I know Naina Manjari is often, she has good ideas about this. She has she had these cans she was doing, distributing. But anyone, any things that you find works in your particular temple? I'm just thinking now, there's so much in Bajai department. You can get people to sponsor outfits, sponsor artis, sponsor boga offerings. You know, and that should all be on the website as well.
Right.
Anything from anyone out there? Okay. Oh yeah, one thing I missed. I've just turned on the camera. I can see two devotees from Hungary. I didn't mention Nitya Seva. It's Krishna's arrangement. Yeah, you see this picture here. This is Radhe Shyam. So Nitya Seva is, if it's managed well and you focus on it, it's really attractive to devotees. I know in Hungary, for the worship of Radhe Shyam in Budapest, then His Holiness Shivaram Swami is really pushing this, and it's working. People are coming forward, and then Nitya Seva, I think, is for one day Nitya Seva, that one person every day of that in that year is set aside for them. I think it's £11,000 there, and they got and it's working. It's happening. It's nicely organized. It's nicely promoted. So that's called Nitya Seva. So that's something you perhaps should think about implementing in your temple. It doesn't have to be £11,000, but what they do with the Nitya Seva income is they buy real estate or they buy properties. And from those properties, income is generated. Yeah, same as they used to do in the temples in India. The deities own land, the deities own assets. So that's something to consider in regards to funding the worship, Nitya Seva. Yeah, we do it to a small degree here. We haven't really focused on it. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Murli, if I can make a few points. This temple where I am in Australia, we don't have a particularly large Indian congregation, but they do have several very successful restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
And the success here, I think, is that the temple president, he's very expert with managing the finances and stuff like that. He's very expert, and he's also very attentive to ensure that no money is wasted. And then another thing, because you talked about Nitya Seva, that's a program they've been running in Mayapur for many, many years now. And what they do is like the way they have it set up there is a person will give a donation, which is then put into a fixed deposit account, and the interest from that account will sponsor a particular arti or Volga offering, whatever it is, one day a year. And Radha Madhava's service is completely covered. Nrsingadev's service is completely covered. And I think there's still a few slots left for Panchatattva and Jagannath. And as far as sponsoring outfits go, they've got outfits sponsored for the next 5 years. And it's just people, a lot of it's online, and Pankaj Janga is the one who started that. And it's just been very, very successful. And it's just, many, many years in advance, the sponsorship goes on. And as I said, Radha Madhava's worship is completely sponsored, as is Nrsingadev's worship.
Yeah.
And what happens is like what they do is like, say, for instance, you sponsored the Rajbol Arti today. The Vijay will go on and he'll read to the deities, today this Arti is sponsored by so and so. So it's a system they've introduced there, and it's actually read out to the deities.
Yeah. Also, there was also Bhaktivedanta Manor as well. They're also quite successful in this Nitya Seva and in raising funds in general. And I was interested to see on the line that there was a seminar that Shruti Dharma done on the fundraising in regards how they're so successful, Bhaktivedanta Manor. but unfortunately, I couldn't find the details of that seminar. So that was out there.
Right.
But yeah, another thing is to give donors Mahabhashad. I think we're all familiar with that. That is always wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Nishingavasharu. Any other points?
Well, sorry,
I was going to say that I make the deities' outfits here, and when I get a sponsor, I'll write their name on a ribbon and stitch it inside the outfit, and it really encourages people who want to do that. It's really a nice thing to do.
That's really nice, person. And you send them a photo of that, or you make sure they know. And
I make sure they know. Sometimes I give them a photo, but they know. They think of it as their outfit, and on the day the deities are wearing it, they take their own pictures. And they ask me sometimes. Sometimes they ask me to let them know when the deity will be wearing it again. But otherwise, they're just happy to have that situation.
yeah, nice. That's very personal. Very sweet. Thank you.